All right, folks, buckle up because here's yet another dose of how our local land of the free, home of the brave treats the people who built it. Seniors in our own city of Denton are being told, pack up your life. We're bulldozing your home so we can build you something better later. Cue the band, cue the bureaucrats, cue the grand illusion. So the Denton Housing Authority, our friendly neighborhood bureaucracy that's all balls and no brains, has decided they're going to tear down a seniors-only affordable housing complex, which is currently home to about 75 seniors, and rebuild it. They say it's more cost-effective to demolish the whole thing and rebuild rather than to maintain it. And the existing residents, mostly low-income or fixed-income seniors, some with disabilities. You know, the people who actually built the tax base we're all standing on. Anyway, those seniors are being forced out before the rebuild is finished. Essentially, pack your lives into boxes and get out. Maybe we'll let you come back in a few years, if the funding happens, if the timeline holds, if you're still around. No promises, though. Have a blessed day. Yes, that sound you hear is me rolling my eyes that hard. I love how government cruelty always seems to come wrapped in a community improvement plan. Let's be very clear. The DHA lists a few reasons for their actions. The buildings are aging, repairs are expensive, renovations are slow. Yeah, all of that, I believe. Buildings do age, things do break, life does happen. But here's the part that they leave out. They've known that for 20 damn years. Maintenance isn't a surprise. Roofs don't suddenly age overnight like bananas. The housing authority chose to let it rot until the only solution was displacement. That's not a funding problem. That's a stewardship failure. And now, according to them, their failure can only be resolved by forcing grandma to move for the first time in 17 years. This is the problem with government-owned housing. When the government owns the roof, the government decides when that roof disappears. You're not a homeowner. You're not even a tenant. You're a participant in an ongoing pilot program we call I Hope the Board Doesn't Change Its Mind. But don't worry, the Housing Authority says that the displaced seniors will be assisted in relocating. Translation, they'll get some piece of paper with some apartment names on it and the warm, fuzzy glow of bureaucratic indifference. Let's be real for a moment. You know what relocating means for seniors on a fixed income? New doctors, lost neighbors, lost social support, more isolation, out of sight, out of mind, right? More stress, and shorter life expectancy. But the press says it's progress, so cue the applause. Let's take a step back and look at this from a humanist perspective. If the government holds the title, government controls the fate. When you put people's homes under the thumb of a housing authority, you're signing up for exactly this. The fate of your roof depends on someone else's timetable. Tell me again how dependency on public housing protects the vulnerable? Because here the vulnerable seniors are getting evicted simply because the housing authority decided a better plan was in the works. These seniors lose their stability based on nothing more than political whims. The words affordable complex should only appear if the budget, the maintenance, and the process allow the people living there to stay, unless they choose to leave, not because they're told to leave so that bulldozers can roll. Meanwhile, the implied assumption is, we know what's better for you than you do. Seniors who've lived there presumably know the community, know their routines. The DHA says, we're rebuilding, so we'll fix it for you. But who's accountable for the interim chaos, the displacement, the hardship? Answer, the bureaucracy, who we all know will only provide the barest minimum of assistance. And then let's talk about unintended consequences. When you force seniors out, you impose transitions, moving, new leases, possible higher costs elsewhere, less social networking. That makes them more dependent, less resilient, and more likely to accept worse terms. That's not freedom. That's locking people onto an Escher staircase. Now, the Denton Housing Authority will undoubtedly tell you all of this is necessary. They've already said the buildings are old, they need repairs, we are rebuilding to serve the residents better. And yes, that's probably all true, but here's the part that they don't say. They've known these buildings were aging for 20 years. So the question, if you knew the place was aging, why was there no long-term plan in place that didn't involve uprooting seniors who've lived there, some for decades? Planning is literally the agency's only job. You had one job, one. The DHA chose not to maintain them. They let them decay because nobody loses their job when a government plan fails. The only people who lose are the ones living under the plan. And now the solution is to scatter low-income seniors across the region, sever their social networks, and call it progress. Translation, it's more cost-effective to uproot an entire community than to have maintained the place responsibly over the last 10 to 20 years. The DHA says it'll take about 24 months to complete the project, and they promise that the residents may be able to move back after construction, which is likely to take much longer because we already know how government projects work in Texas. I mean, look at I-35 for evidence of that particular accusation. The point is that it's not a guarantee. It's a breakup text. If you stay alive long enough, maybe we'll get back together. This isn't about affordable housing, it's about control. The state wants to be your landlord because the landlord is the one who gets to say where you live, and how long you stay. Sorry, but you don't get to call controlled demolition community care. When your home depends on a government promise instead of a property right, you don't live in housing, you live in a press release. The problem isn't the rebuild, the problem is that the government owns the homes. When the government owns the roof, the government decides when it disappears. This is what dependency looks like. Not comfort, not protection, fragility. Your home only exists until the plan changes. Now, I'm not saying that the market is perfect. It's not. But at least when you rent or buy in the free market, the landlord doesn't bulldoze your house because a 5-year redevelopment grant landed on their desk like a winning scratch-off ticket. Affordable housing shouldn't mean one committee vote away from eviction. Citizens, and seniors in particular, deserve stability, not a forced relocation day overseen by a case manager with a fake smile and a clipboard. Here's the lesson. Under a system where housing is treated as a public entitlement and is managed by agencies with impersonal decisions, you end up having a political group having the power over people's shelter rather than the empowerment of the individuals. The Constitution doesn't guarantee cheap housing. It guarantees liberty. If folks choose to build or rent affordable housing in the free market, great. But when we create massive institutions, we also create massive upheavals when they arbitrarily shift plans. Here at Unhinged Rants, this is classic fare. Career politicians and agencies telling you, don't worry, we've got a plan, while that same plan kicks you out of your home. The irony, the beautiful new complex will likely cost more to run, will be more complicated, and probably shift the burden back to taxpayers or residents in new and inventive ways. Meanwhile, the folks who counted on stability got told, thanks, see you later. So here's a takeaway, and I'm saying this in full Marine vet voice. If you live in something that isn't yours, if your roof depends on some authority's plan rather than your own contract, you are not free. You are the subject to the whims of someone else's timetable. Seniors in Denton shouldn't be collateral damage in an agency's redevelopment fantasy. They deserve actual freedom, the freedom to stay put, the freedom to choose, and the freedom not to be evicted because the plan changed. That, my friends, is what affordable should mean. Yes, the Denton Housing Authority will claim, and probably has claimed, that compassion for the existing residents has already been factored into the plan. And maybe it's just me, but I don't see it that way. You want real compassion? Empower the people to have control over their own shelter. Not promises, not wait lists, not maybe you can come back someday. Control, ownership, choice. Because freedom is not just about speech, religion, or press. Freedom is about being able to stay in your own damn home.